today we are on lots of different time zones. And I know for some of you, it's noon if you're on US Eastern time, but it could be one of the three US time zones. I'm in the Indian Standard Time, and Ryan is in Australian. What's your time zone?
We're Australian Eastern Daylight, I think,
Okay.
ADT. So yeah, just on Sydney.
What I do know is that Ryan woke up at 4 a.m. today to get together with us. So we're super, super grateful. I don't know if you've had a donor that made you wake up so early, maybe for a trip.
Yeah, no, but look, it's a blessing because I've always wanted to be on a LinkedIn discussion where I'm still wearing my pajamas, kind of, and yeah, this is the time. I feel like COVID's reinvented itself.
All back, it's coming back to haunt you. Well, breaking news: fundraiser in pajamas, another fundraiser in a t-shirt, because it's just very hot here. I asked Ryan to join us because I was fortunate enough to meet him, and Ryan is a really busy guy. So we kind of were going back and forth over the period of, I would say half a year. I don't know if that sounds accurate. I think in the middle of that, you might have moved, or we're going to get into that in a moment. And then Ryan, I was super interested because it's not every day that you meet a fundraiser that actually in his signature has like a book and a website, and has shown a whole lot of like inquiry and analysis into our profession. So I was super interested in reading your great book. It's called Future Philanthropy. And I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit more about it, but I'll just kind of, for folks who are here listening, I think it's kind of a new perspective. It looks at things with fresh eyes. And I was telling Ryan also before, it kind of reflects, I feel, your own wide variety of interests. So it's not just I'm a higher ed fundraiser, and that's what I do, but there's political fundraising, social, there's community building, there's technology. And I think like that's what's going to get us to move forward, right? Thinking of things from lots of different angles and finding solutions maybe in the corners of the philanthropy world. So I'd love it if you'd care to share a little bit about your background and what led you to write the book. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for taking the time as well, being there in India. I think you're just as busy as everyone else, so kudos to the work you do. Yeah, in terms of background, I was mainly involved in politics first, so really had a genuine empathy and understanding and wanting to make a difference in my community. The reason that came about is mainly because of my upbringing and a pivotal point in my own life, which was when I was 16. My mum moved us all over from London to North Queensland in Australia. So going from London to a very regional centre, and she's a nurse by trade, and my dad was a cleaner, so very working class family, but very aspirational as well. So when I came over, it's like a second chance. I think if I was still in England, I wouldn't have gone to university. Coming here, I got to, again, restart with 16 years of not kind of wisdom, but of experience and wanting to take advantage of that second opportunity. So that's what drew me to education. I was the first in my family on both sides to go to university. And when I got there, had the usual issues of having to work a couple of jobs to pay for then compulsory student union fees. So actually had to take a loan from the student union to actually go to university because it was compulsory to have all those squared away. So with that, it actually drew me into, there must be thousands of people like me that are in, the college or in the classrooms that I am. So it drew me to go in and get involved in student politics. And within a year, I was running, the commercial operations of the student union, which is a kind of $1 million budget. So, in my very, very early 20s, and then started representing students. And that's what kind of drew me to higher ed and I guess the social mobility that it can, in fact, conjure through education. And so I've always been kind of learning. but not learning in that kind of traditional sense because I'm dyslexic. So I'm always looking at different angles and I connect the dots in different ways. And I think you could probably see that through the book, that it's no real kind of straight arc. It's very much a mosaic of what can be. And then, mosaics come and show a picture at the end, even though it doesn't look like it at the start. So, got involved in did that kind of transition from student politics to real politics, where I was an advisor in the Australian Parliament. And just did community-based stuff. I founded a soccer club that's now got over 1,000 members. It's one of the biggest clubs in Brisbane, Australia. So always been involved in different things, and but with community at its core. And then we had one of those once in a generation kind of natural disasters in our area, which was a flood, which now that once in a generation is obviously a statistical approach, right? So you can actually have 2 once in a generation disasters in the space of 10 years. And I was just burnt out. So I went, traveled the world and, met my now wife in Rome, and then kind of decided, well, I'm going to go hitch a ride into the 2012 Obama re-election campaign, as everyone who was in the space was trying to do. And I was lucky enough to work very close to, again, my now wife, and but realized after the campaign had finished, I was 30 years old and still knocking on doors. And I went from kind of being like a national organizer down to, folding and stuffing envelopes as well, and starting that process again. So she said, look, you're 30. What are you going to do now? And I really wanted to do something that was still community focused, but maybe something that was more unique to that space. So instead of working with the community and then, I guess, canvassing their votes, how could I use my skills, those transferable values, based skills, to really take my career to a new level, when it really was kind of a career pivot, as many people do these days. And just someone I met on the campaign worked for the San Diego Foundation, which is a $1 billion endowed community foundation. And, within the space, again, of a year, and many other things that kind of happened due to circumstance, I was running the Centre for Civic Engagement and the Civic Leadership Fund, and just found that meeting with people that were, again, interested in lifting up their community and then connecting the dots in a way that they perhaps couldn't because they didn't have access, and bringing in resources in non-traditional ways. So it wasn't kind of fundraising for, hey, let's create a trust, or let's create, a sub-fund foundation. It was, how can we just bring like $5 to $10 in and pool that money and democratize philanthropy? And really, in my first couple of weeks, I knew I was in a good spot because folks would sit me down and say, you can't say that here. And then I go out and write an op-ed about what the future of philanthropy might look like through a new generation. And, was pulled in by the CEO and severely reprimanded. And I'm like, okay, there's something here that I'm not seeing, and obviously people aren't seeing. So
Ryan, I'm super interested in this rabble rousing part of your career. What was in your op-ed?
Still part, yeah. It was really, again, it was just engagement and pipeline building and bringing new voices to the table. And with that, it was, I don't just kind of talk about it, I want to do it as well, right? So I went out and recruited the first kind of majority people of color committee that was a steering committee for the fund. And we did it. It was a big to-do. And, we also brought in Robert Reich to talk about his movie Inequality for All. And I remember now, that was really kind of the pivotal part of my career. It could have all gone to fallen apart, as it were, because my job was on the line, because I advocated for, because we basically hired a cinema theatre, And I said, no, I don't want to just bring in the donors because, again, they basically paid $25,000 and it's an entry level kind of ticket price. So if we're actually going to talk about inequality, why don't we actually mix up the audience and, bring in people that it directly affects? So we had everything from students, nonprofits, it was like a third each. And it all ended up with, it was a full house, and Robert obviously delivered a great kind of speech after the movie happened. And then our board chair his wife got up and asked the question about, what if we're not in the 1%? What if we're in the kind of top 10%? What can we do? And it was met with a lot of apprehension from the rest of the crowd, and they called her out, and she ended up running out. And he followed her. So I got into a lot of trouble with that, but I'm like, okay, I shouldn't be here. I should be using my own privilege to kind of break down some of those barriers and the power dynamics that exist between grantors and grantees. So I moved to, a non-profit that, again, worked with a lot of first of their family students going to college. There's some great stories there. But with that, again, walked straight in and said, why do we represent students, and we're kind of trying to give them a better way of life, but why do we have a golf event? Why do we have a 5K beer run? It's kind of a counter narrative, so we cut a lot of that. Again, everything was not just looking outside the box, but from a different box. It had a very shallow donor pool of like around 100 donors, where only a couple were like in the four figures, and just go, what's our value here to the societies? And started saying, well, if you want to be on the board, it's not give or get, it's give of $10,000, knowing the worth and the impact and the ROI. It was a deeply everyone that was there had a deep connection to the work and had the capacity. And they also wanted to build a new squash and education center, which is like $12.5 million, and they just didn't have the money there from their donor base. So started looking at new market tax credits, started looking at kind of promise zones that were one of the focal points of the, I guess, infrastructure building of the Obama administration, and just took inspiration from the work of like Jeffrey Canada and the work he did in Harlem. And it just, everything kind of worked out that we ended up raising $12.5 million with kind of leveraged funds there. And that actually is featured in the book, because that was the first time, again, I saw the power of philanthropy, and also the new upcoming trends in philanthropy in terms of impact investing, etc., of what could be leveraged if the board was willing to take some risks. Because at the end of the day, they were willing to take on loans as well to pay for it, because they believed in it. So, values driven work, and just building a compelling case around it. That just draw in. Then the great thing is it was built during COVID, and I got to do my San Diego launch of my book at the actual facility, which is a really kind of powerful backdrop, and it kind of gives you chills when you walk on, seeing again scale at its best. So then kind of got in a regional association of grant makers, and that's when I really started doubling down. I had a great mentor in Nancy Jameson, who sadly kind of passed during COVID. And she just told me to be myself and just explore and, be very unabashed in asking questions. So again, we started looking at donor scores, like building it through kind of the new Salesforce platform, so we could see who our most engaged people were. So that kind of led me on, like, what can AI do? What can, just building very basic models and dashboards, and how do we kind of reverse engineer those so we can actually see them virtually, and we can kind of, again, make more informed decision making, informed decisions, and take the board with us, as it were. We're looking at kind of impact investing much more broadly, and set up the San Diego Impact Investors Network, where they wanted to unlock $100 million over kind of a 20-year period. And it was just fun to experiment. And I just started seeing, regional associations of grant makers being much more dynamic in the space. So again, chambers of commerce, right, of impact investors, of foundations, of corporate funders, and just educating them of different ways and approaches, and obviously a lot of it through an equity-based lens. This was a kind of another key milestone in my work, is being from the UK, having 3 chapters of my own life, like being from the UK, being from Australia, and then living 10 years in the US. You see society in so many different ways, and you see kind of the trauma that a lot of these countries have, and the ongoing problems they have with race relations. And so I did a lot of research on and courses on kind of just history, right? And going, this doesn't all stack up, and then kind of understanding that a lot of the problems are actually baked into policy. And I'm like, well, what happens if we're aware of this and we're starting to undo a lot of that kind of harm that's baked into our laws, with people building AI and having that unconscious bias, and then kind of creating a 2-speed issue where we might be fighting the same battles in a 20 years time, but where we can't actually pinpoint where the issues lie, and having the skills from the decision makers to actually do all that. So just that's kind of where the real innovative part of my career came in. Then I was chief of staff at National University, and kind of worked with the Fundraising Academy. I don't know if they've come onto your radar yet, but again, kind of that was like the HR piece that is prevalent in my book. And that's when I started thinking about kind of non-profit Moneyball, and how do we kind of educate fundraisers, and how do we look at retention? Is there a way tech can kind of help with that? So I did like predictive index. Like a lot of the stuff I do is just purely because I'm curious about it, and I'll go enough down that kind of rabbit hole where I'll get accredited, I'll get everything, but I know not enough to be kind of the subject matter expert, but enough to be dangerous in those conversations and help spur innovation through others that actually are pulling the levers of change, not only in their kind of organizations, but also their their communities. And then my wife got a job in Austin, and then went and worked for the University of Texas Computer Science Department. And that's when, and then COVID hit 3 weeks later. So I found I was sitting down just doing a lot of kind of research into quantum computing and AI, and kind of the various approaches to that. Just started getting creative with it. I'm like, well, what if you looked at it through a non-profit lens? And then I decided, well, I'm just gonna, everything I learn, I'm gonna try and teach out in a very kind of basic, this is what the applications might be, not kind of going into, well, this is how you code. That's not my expertise. I'm not that technical, as it were. But I started getting really good feedback, and people were starting to again take those conversations online, offline, etc. And just during the pandemic, you've got a lot of spare time on your hands, and you either go running, or you kind of sit down and do kind of that passion project. And the book came about really as a cathartic exercise in everything that was in my kind of my head. And it was just great, and it's just opened so many doors to folks like yourself, people that are again doing great work. It's kind of been like an underdog story, as it were, where people it's been people that are like emerging in their careers, and really just want to see what the future might be, and have the skills and knowledge and understanding of what the field might look like in 10 years. So it's been a fun ride, and it's like, I'd say it's been a slow burn, but everything's kind of picking up, and the book's obviously won a number of international awards now, and we're just signed a contract with a Korean publisher, so now it's kind of going into different languages and stuff. And it's all exciting. And the good thing is the work doesn't stop with that. That's kind of like, okay, that's the tech I was looking at now, and now it's kind of looking again at more natural language processing, kind of low code AI, and more kind of the scrappy stuff that you can use now, because a lot of the tech is actually accessible, and we've got to stop waiting for it to be the last revenue vertical for a commercial company, and really start kind of working arm in arm with a lot of technologists about, how do we reap the benefits of it now? So when we do get to that 10-year thing, point, a lot of the stuff that I'm predicting, it surpasses that. Like, my goal is to work and help those that are in the space and kind of, get those products out into people's hands. Well, and not even products, solutions, right?
This is amazing. So you're kind of, if I might share a little bit of the essence of what I'm hearing today, it sounds like you're very entrepreneurial and also not afraid to kind of maybe go up to the very, limit of what people think is possible or should happen, or maybe a little bit beyond that, kind of exploring the limits there. I was told once in my career that I like to jump into pools without knowing if there's water in it. And I feel like sometimes you may identify with that. But there's two pieces I'd love to cover today. One of them is, you mentioned the mosaic. So it's true that your book has lots of different stories. In your mind, what is the picture that comes out of it? What is there a thesis that it really sounds like you started this from a kind of autobiographical, but also very empirical point of view. Like, I'm just going to find really interesting people and cool stuff that's happening. Is there like an emerging picture?
Yeah, it's just progress, right? It's just if we're not talking about this, it's not going to be achieved. It's like all the stuff that's coming down the pike, and this tech is coming. Like, we know it is. We're seeing it in practice. Like, when I guess kind of Chat GPT came out, everyone was going kind of crazy about it. I'm like, well, no, this is kind of natural language processing. This is how we can actually apply it beyond just kind of writing cases for support, right? So again, how do we think beyond those binary reactions to new things, and how do we demystify it? Because with that platform, you can build dashboards, you can kind of scrape LinkedIn for prospects, you can just basically do grants research on kind of taxonomy codes, and again, passing information from 990s. That it's just, again, it's the things that we can do, but we can't do simply, right? It's like you need all the technical skills. Now, someone's actually given us a calculator for our exam. So again, mine is just, again, demystifying the tech and showing that it can help us. Like, AI is not going to replace our jobs, but someone who's using AI is. And that's something we've got kind of to get to grips with. And with AI really kind of automating and perhaps even making a lot of traditional kind of jobs redundant, as it were, a lot of them are going to be flowing into the services sector. So it's a real opportunity for any non-profit to go out and recruit new talent. And so that's why, what are the jobs of tomorrow? It's kind of data analysts. It's going to be community organizers that are kind of a hybrid of a program officer. There's so many cool things. So yeah, my book really is just kind of drawing a line in the sand and saying, what could be. We talk about kind of the scarcity mindset and stuff. Well, tech gives us abundance because it gives us the knowledge to go out and do it. And it also gets it looks at solutions in ways that we can't do. Like, we sit on troves of data, right? Like, organizations that have been around for 50 years have so much information on those they serve, but they don't have a way to interpret it. And when data comes in, and there's a lot of kind of data visualization tools out there, we cherry pick the I guess the best ones to reinform a strategic plan. And strategic plans stifle your creativity. And so that's why I'm a big advocate of like strategic phasing. So, how do we keep on making progress, get to that point?
Agile.
Oh yeah, thinking. For sure. Yeah. And just going, let's just keep on moving, moving the markers of success. Like, if you've hit your goals, like in the first quarter, like, what motivation is there to go beyond those? Like, everyone takes their foot off the pedal and go, okay, we're done, when we should be really putting kind of that pedal to the floor and just going, what could be? And yeah, so again, I think with a lot of the data now, we can look at it in different ways and probably have machine learning go, okay, we've been running these models now for a year in the background. Have you tried this approach? And then the CEO can go, okay, look, we've been looking at this kind of civic triage for all of our the time the organization's been around. What if we did this different program and approach homelessness this way? Is there a way to kind of solve it? Is there a way to tackle poverty in new ways that could be replicated, not scaled for that individual area, but replicated so we can actually solve these issues much more broadly? So yeah, it's progress. Again, it's just having conversations like this. Even if one person sees it, that's my job done.
Awesome. This is great, Ryan. So I've started to kind of say that very often, because of these advancements in technology, the no-code movement, AI, that we're starting to face something different, which is not a failure of capacity, but a failure of imagination. Like suddenly, all these think like very basic automation tools that are available. It's just coming up with the things, right? It's like coming up with the applications. Have you seen that? How, from everything you've learned in the book, like how do we get out of this rut?
I think it's just making time to discuss it first and foremost, and then kind of just committing to it. And that it's got to be part of your culture that and this is when I was at San Diego Grantmakers, the regional association. We had to look at our mission, vision, and values, and I'm like, well, why don't one of our values be being future focused? And that means, again, kind of not just looking at philanthropy as a transactional element, but how does philanthropy really transition to or plug into a social justice movement where we actually are tackling those systemic issues, and not just kind of dismantling or whatever you want to kind of look at on the fringes, but how do we actually work with lawmakers, because you can't change systems. And I mean, this is kind of the laws, not kind of systems from a tech sense. And how do we kind of give them, again, the data and the skills to move it forward? I mean, if you do the hard work early, you can start automating stuff. It's like with a book, everyone goes, well, you're such a prolific writer, and you're always kind of doing stuff. It's just automation. It's like you do the work. I've got a whole I have a book worth of ideas, and it's breaking them down and kind of doubling down. And you can take a blog post, right, and then you can literally just have that Lumen 5 plug in, and then all of a sudden it's kind of using, again, AI and natural language processing, identifying the key parts of that article, and then building a video. That's a great thing about platforms. Once you've kind of got the API in there, you can it will ping you and saying, hey, we've done this work for you. Do you want to use it? So, even with blog posts now, like you can get the Anchor plugin, right? And it can build a podcast for you. Like you don't have to, for the book, for example, I have people that still go, hey, would you like me to narrate it and, put it on Audible? I'm like, well, no, because you've kind of got the app that can narrate it for you for free, and just kind of put it into much more like dynamic channels, like kind of on podcasts and things like that. So everything is there. It's just, again, it's just being future focused. It's like we go, well, who's dropped the ball? Like, where is this on a process, right? We become so in the weeds and micromanage. Like, why don't we use smart sheets to kind of move cards along so people get pinged when it's their turn to do it? We've got again, people. I think that if we look at, again, we have the tech solutions now, and start doing it. It's like DocuSign, right? That's a great example of kind of workflow. It has the kind of legal contracts and stuff, and it should be a focal point of introducing smart contracts for foundations and speeding up the grant making process, so you don't have to fill in all these application forms that. I think tag funders actually showed that over 30% of all applications are duplicative. So how do we kind of automate that stuff? So basically just people are plugging in their details, and, if you're eligible, then, the funds can be dispersed straight away and executed in different ways. So you don't have to do big reporting either. It can actually look at where your progress is and give more money early, or if the project didn't work, it can bring back kind of cash. Again, there's so much out there. It's just again, nonprofits are the last to know, and they're the last to get it. And when we do get it, it's a plug and play model, which isn't it doesn't sync up well with our systems. It's a different platform, so we need all these different kind of passwords, and then all that relationship's lost when fundraisers move on after 16 months. I think it's just it really is a governance thing, and it's kind of a leadership thing. But I could go on and rant. You can see I'm starting
my goodness, Ryan,
get all worked up at 4:30 in the morning.
Yes, we got you out of bed. I want to guarantee to the people that are here with us that this broadcast is 100% human. There was no AI involved. In fact, I kind of screwed up the platform in some way before we started, so that's why we were a little bit late. I think we're going to start a seal of authenticity for humanity. But Ryan, I was going to say, boy, I feel like you must sometimes be very frustrated with things, because it's okay. Like if you haven't seen the light, and then all you know is just walking in the dark, that's okay. That's, the world, humdy-dum. But if you have kind of, because you've explored it or imagined it, what does your day-to-day look like? Because I feel like there must be some tension there, right? Where you're saying, oh boy, like, we have to make this work now, right? Because we live now. We need to get the money now and the scholarships that we need to make. We need to change those lives right now, but it could be so much better.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. As I said, it's not AI is not going to take our jobs, and being a fundraiser, it still is that kind of personal element to it. So, in terms of my job, like obviously, this is kind of, I guess, while it is kind of my values, and like I live and breathe this stuff.
Exactly.
I'm able to compartmentalize a lot of my kind of work and just normal stuff. Like I've got 2 young kids at 4 and 6 as well. So actually getting up at 4 a.m. is not that out of the ordinary if I want to kind of get stuff done and kind of again get the quiet time to research a lot of the stuff. But coming back to Australia after 10 years in the US, and coming from really kind of the gold standard of fundraising and all the platforms that the University of Texas had. Like, I mean, it's got the second largest endowment after Harvard, which not many people kind of realize. And they have a huge machine, and they're just coming out of a $6 billion kind of fundraising campaign. So going from all of that, where they actually do use AI, and I've kind of again worked with the company that was building that, and seeing kind of again all the stats in the background, and I guess tinkering with the model to make it again a lot more effective, and just how they go about prospect identification. It isn't just type in Google, right, or and say who are the top 10 fundraisers. Again, it's kind of just the layers there. And coming back to Australia, we don't have that. I'm working out of Excel spreadsheets again. But with that, it's actually kind of quite grounding in a way. And I would say to a lot of my colleagues, and this has been a 6-month transition for me mentally as well, coming back and I guess recalibrating. I'm saying that Australia is 10 years behind, but someone pointed out to me really kind of quite wise and said, no, you're not 10 years behind, you are where you are now. And so again, that's the opportunity. And that was kind of the real draw for me to come back. Like I always wanted to come back to Australia and help. Whether it was through, because it's given me so much, right? So if but now with being a fundraiser as well, and we don't raise too many 8-figure gifts in Australia, let alone kind of the nines that we're seeing quite regularity in the US now. So being able to bring that kind of skills, experience, and how do we get there, and then articulate that back out. That's one of the things that I can help with. And the good thing is it's like that perfect moment in time, because the Australian government the incoming administration wanted to double philanthropy by 2030. And so kind of working through them, what are the nuances? Because I remember when we first got together and I kind of shared that with you, there was a lot of kind of gray area, right? And there wasn't really a lot of understanding. It was all kind of philanthrobabble, as it were. And but the thing is, coming back, I can speak with the minister, like, because I know them, so I can have direct access. It's like I can't call one of the secretaries, like I can't call up Kamala Harris, right, and just go, hey, there's a kind of there's something vastly missing here. And so I spoke to the minister about what was missing from that. And I mean, you can build all these great vehicles and further incentivize it through the tax code and various things, but where are your fundraisers? How are you going to raise that money if no one's asking? So where is an investment in the infrastructure, not just kind of the tech, but the people? And so saw a big gap. And when I was actually recruiting my own team and building that out, it was like, man, we have there's not a talent deficit in Australia by any means. There's some amazing folks. It's just they don't see themselves in a fundraising role because it's not part of the culture. They don't have the systems. You're not seeing the success. You're not seeing those, getting inspired by those donors that have gone through, trials and tribulations and success and failures and have actually given back. And that's why I kind of, I guess, overshare in terms of my background, because we all go in different directions, right, until we get there. So, I decided to create something that was very similar to Teach for America, Code for America, and obviously Venture for America. These are all things I've had kind of experiences with, like, and I've served on their boards and spoke to their leadership. And I'm like, well, why don't we actually go out and recruit fundraisers in this kind of critical period? So before I got back to the US, like, obviously I started working for the Australian National University in November of it's all blurring now, in 21, and didn't move back until May of last year. Created an organization called Fundraise for Australia, went out and actively recruited some people that were saying the same things as me for an Australian lens on LinkedIn, right? And started just reaching out to them and built really good friendships with them. And now they're on the advisory group. So we're now working with GoFundMe. We're working with kind of executive search firms. We're working with, again, fundraisers in the space, fundraisers like former chair of the Fundraising Institute of Australia. So all these people want to see movement, right? So
that's amazing.
My wife's a technical recruiter, so she showed me how to use kind of LinkedIn, the kind of recruiter table. And so started using that, and also my predictive index kind of training to go, what are the best skills to identify people. And then I actively went and recruited them. And we're about to announce, not next week, but on the 23rd, our first cohort of 25 people that aren't fundraisers or have had zero. They're in their first year of fundraising, and working with the Fundraising Academy. Again, my kind of my background there, to deliver a kind of accelerate, which will be 10 sessions, 3.5 hours of training, so they can hit the ground running. But a lot of it is not just kind of that foundational training. It's like one of the sessions they get to meet with a philanthropist and start having those conversations. One's like, it's kind of building your pitch and actually articulating it to fundraisers and being critiqued on it, and again those kind of real skills. So again, they can, if they were a salesperson for a SaaS company, right, they can go on and they can sell a scholarship. So that's what we're doing. And we're hoping that over time it starts compounding. Our small goals at the moment, before we kind of again take it to that next level, if this pilot is actually effective, is we want to train 250 new fundraisers, which again, kind of, we did the math, and that'd be around $35 million added to that goal of doubling philanthropy. So this is just a little thing that you do in your spare time, right? But it has a big effect. And I look at scale, not again through kind of, because nonprofits don't scale like products do, right? So you can build the latest fancy widget, and then with mass
sell
production,
it to 10 people, and you sell the same one to 10 million people.
Yeah, exactly. And you're taking advantage of the economies of scale. You're successful in nonprofits, and you have to find more resources to pay for those services, more staff to deliver those services. But I had the really great opportunity to meet with John List, who's the chief economist at Walmart, was the chief economist for Uber and Lyft
Wow.
before. And his book, The Voltage Effect, if you haven't read it, you should definitely read it. It talks about kind of scale, but through the lens of replication. So you can kind of have all A/B testing and stuff, and you can, scale might have unique features to it. So it might just be a really dynamic founder, right? But if we can see replication and actually test that out in kind of field studies, and then go, okay, this is the secret sauce, as it were, and then kind of take it from Seattle to Miami, take it to Nebraska, various things, and actually tackle these big existential issues head on, and with data and information, and philanthropy can actually move again beyond triage, right? And start not just doing impact investing, but funding replication efforts. They're doing innovative things all the time. Like, people are buying back medical debt, right? So people can, start afresh and have more social mobility, and there's some great stuff going on. And that's just today's kind of.
This is what you were thinking at before 4 a.m. After 4 a.m., we get the rest of Ryan Ginard. I love what you shared about kind of the replication, the more like a cellular model. I have an anecdote to reinforce your point, and I think I've been on this gentleman's blog. Was he at University of Chicago? Maybe at some point. I don't know. So I interviewed some time ago. I interviewed schools that had been able to increase their alumni participation over 10 years. So the States has this great, amazing benchmark. And one of the things I noticed in this, which goes totally to your point, was that there was no school that started a program, an engagement program, any types of the programs universities do, like reunions, and then grew that program, and it just grew and exploded. That didn't exist. What they all did was, we grow this, and then we started another program, and this one didn't work, and we started another program. And so they replicated that kind of, I imagine, kind of what you're saying, the secret sauce that they have. Maybe they were aware of it, or maybe they weren't, right? The culture, the way of doing things, the systems. And I love that you're bringing awareness to that, because I'm kind of a nerd about of these things. Like, how do you grow a network? That's something we're talking about here in Indian Alma Base a whole lot, right? What does that exactly mean? Lots of the times it's kind of intrinsic knowledge. People have kind of gone through an apprenticeship model and haven't really realized that. Fundraise for Australia, I'm sure there's going to be some people at the very least who listen to this either right now or in the future, who are intrigued and maybe want to help, or might be in a position to help. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Firstly, you can just kind of reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always kind of responding to anyone and everyone, and it actually has my contact details in the masthead there. So you've got kind of my email and even my cell. I kind of try and make myself accessible. But for information actually on Fundraise for Australia, it's just fundraiseforaustralia.com. So FOR. We're really excited to announce that first cohort, and then again tell the stories about why they came through. And again, we wanted to do a pilot for it and go, if it doesn't work, we can at least report out the data and at least make sure it contributed to further enhancement of the field, because with all the issues we have with kind of retention are very rife down here, and probably more acute. Because there isn't a lot, we're dealing with 60,000 nonprofits here in Australia, whereas it's kind of 1.5 million in the US, right? And probably then some in terms of unincorporated groups and community-based groups there. So that's how you kind of check that out. And again, I was talking to Beth Breeze in the UK. They're doing some pretty cool stuff with internships, because it was built into one of the tax increases, I believe. And we've been talking about kind of again the good elements of both to see if there's any other different verticals that might actually help people get into the space and again see themselves as fundraisers, because it's great values driven work. The jobs are actually good paying jobs as well, and there's a lot of career progression where you can basically start off at a small Australian regional university, and you can I'd say if you really kind of set your mind to it, you could work for Harvard in the development role and get paid, several $100,000 in US. So again, it's a great career to be in. It's an international career, and that's why I took my CFRE, and that's really helped with my transition as well. And again, how do we further professionalize the space? Because there isn't undergrad degrees, there isn't kind of guidance counselors in high school saying you have all these skills. Have you thought about a career in fundraising or non-profits? Never happens. And the CFRE and I guess the work of AFP, they're professionalizing the sector, but you don't kind of have the stuff that you can literally just kind of start fundraising today. If you listen to this and you go, I want to be a fundraiser, you can put in your application. And I guarantee, because there's a scarcity of kind of positions, you at least get an interview.
Well, that's great. And the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics agrees with you, thinks that fundraising is one of the fastest growing professions, which for all the doom and gloom, I wonder where that's coming from. There was one comment before we go today, and I'd love to have your insight on that. Olivia, dear member of the Donor Participation Project, was talking about institutional inertia. She says, I feel as though my institution knows about these technologies, but are wary to try them. It's kind of that failure of imagination, or we're just all tired, what you said, right? We don't have time to even think about these things.
Yeah.
I feel like you don't stand for that type of thing, and you'll push things through. Sometimes I'm a little bit the same, and I hesitate to advise that as the kind of default course of action for everybody. What can we do about that? I mean, is it just kind of an awareness thing? We just need to keep, like your book, and keep elevating people's sights?
Yeah, I think it's, again, that cultural shift. And I'm glad you talk about that, because it's like having a fundraising culture, right? It's like sometimes you'll have an ED where they've started to go down this route, I'm not a fundraiser. But everyone is a fundraiser. Like again, you're seeing the book. I love using sporting analogies, and it's kind of a shame that I've moved back to Australia, because now I have to kind of work out in a different sport, because I'd always use NFL, right? So you'd have the fundraiser is essentially your quarterback. Your CEO draws up kind of the plays and the plan, which is that you're, for want of a better term, strategic plan, right? And then, the quarterback sometimes scores, but, sometimes you're passing to your running back, which might be, one of your board members. Sometimes you throw it to your wide receiver, that might be, a program manager or a VP. You need the right people to execute. So whether that's getting a new voice on the board, whether that is actually getting someone that is kind of your tech person on staff, someone who can champion the stuff and bring solutions to the table. I think the first step, and Olivia, would be to really just carve out time even if it's just kind of once a quarter in your staff meetings, to talk about kind of ways you can be innovative and creative, and then just have an open forum where you can go, hey, I saw this platform, are we interested in at least trialing it? And also kind of, when it comes to doing budgets for the next year, have money put aside for tech, or even with kind of writing grants. Don't be afraid to actually put in for a grant to actually fund a lot of these tech options. And it's just, again, talking about it, but trial and error. Like, I mean, tech is all about trial and error, right? It's just a tool, that can support your work. So why would you not take advantage of that? Like, again, it is scary, and sometimes you have to cede control. But again, isn't that what philanthropy is talking about? Ceding power, kind of from an equity standpoint. So why can the values work for one thing but not the other? And let's just, we're at a disadvantage anyway, just through the very nature of our work. So, if there are solutions, again, just have a better toolbox and have a more informed toolbox. So yeah, just go out, talk about it, and just prove it out.
Boy, this conversation was invigorating today, Ryan. Everybody who's interested in learning more about all of this, please connect with Ryan on LinkedIn. Check out his book, The Future of Philanthropy. He does some great analysis on tech, talents, and trends, which I love, because you include the talent piece, right? That people are important too. And we just learned today about Fundraise for Australia. So if you happen to be an Australian fundraiser who's up at 4 almost 5 a.m. already, or if you're catching this later on when it goes viral, as we know it will, check that out because there's a lot of opportunities, says Ryan. And I'll call you later, Ryan, for those tips to get into Harvard, because I think I may need some help there. Thanks so much. We really appreciate you.
And appreciate all you do. Again, some people really do rely on these tips to kind of move it forward. So, you're creating a movement, and kudos to you for that.
Well, I see I have a convinced soul on the other side of the world. Take care.
All right.